Welcome to another great episode of Real Bigfoot Encounters with Reverend Jeff. This week's story comes to us from Travis. He tells us he became interested in Bigfoot basically through a joke. In high school, his best friend was supposed to write a paper about spending an hour in the woods. Instead, he wrote a hilarious story about meeting Bigfoot in the woods and pretty much failed English. They had a punk band, and from then on, they pretty much wrote all their songs about Bigfoot. One day they were informed that there was a local Bigfoot research group that went on expeditions, and the public was welcome. This is that story. In the summer of 2005, we finally got to go out with the local Bigfoot group. We went about 40 minutes outside of Grants Pass, Oregon. I was definitely not expecting to see Bigfoot during this trip. I brought two friends, Hank and Zach. We were basically expecting to gather material for songs to play in our crappy punk band. There were 5 people there who were already associated with this research group. 4 local people and 1 guy flew all the way from Minnesota specifically for this trip. I forget the exact reason for this, but it was something along the lines of a silver spirit Bigfoot approached him and told him to. So we were all thinking, holy shit, we're going to be able to write hilarious Bigfoot songs for the rest of our lives from just this trip. We set up camp and got to know everyone and listened to their stories about all the multiple Sasquatch they had seen here, as well as the orbs, and ghosts, and UFOs, etc. We were having a hard time keeping straight faces, so we decided to take a walk down the side road to catch our breath. We were walking and cracking up for about 5 minutes when we became aware that it sounded like something was walking parallel to us in the woods. We would occasionally stop short, and whatever was walking would stop too. We decided to walk back to camp and came to the conclusion that we were just freaking ourselves out because we were in the middle of nowhere with strangers who were talking about orbs, holographic alien Sasquatch. We were all sitting around as it got dark, and I started to hear movement in the woods. The co-leader of the research group informed us that was them, meaning Sasquatch, of course. I was thinking it seemed pretty convenient. We've been out here a total of a few hours, and they just come right to us? Highly unlikely. As it got later and later, nothing eventful happened, and people started going to bed. Hank and Zach were asleep in my car, and myself and 2 younger participants put up lawn chairs down the road from the camp. We were sitting and bullshitting, and one of the guys says, "Ow!" He informed us that he had been hit in the leg with something. We sat there silently for a few minutes, and a small rock clacked off the ground in front of us. The way that it bounced indicated that it came from our left, the uphill side of the road. As we sat, this happened every few minutes for a half an hour or so. It sounded like rocks were coming from 2 locations. Suddenly, from down the road and off into the brush, we heard 5 to 6 bipedal-sounding footsteps coming towards us. They stopped, and a powerful grunt or groan, it's hard to describe, sounded off. We decided we'd had just about enough of this, and we were going to bed. I was honestly terrified. I climbed into the back of my car and went to sleep. Sometime in the middle of the night, Zach woke me up and asked if I smelled something terrible. And I did. It reeked. It was like a combination of crap and ammonia. It faded after a few minutes, and I drifted back off to sleep. Hank and I woke up at the crack of dawn because the sun was turning the car into an oven. We got up and checked the bait. Peanut butter and jelly and Vienna sausages. Yeah, funny, I know. And we'd put it out behind the camp the night before. Some of the sandwiches were kind of disturbed, and forgetting my terror the night before, I thought nothing of it. I went back to sleep in the car, and Hank stayed up. Everyone else was still asleep at this point. As I was sleeping in the car with Zach, Hank was sitting outside. He apparently heard movement in the woods and looked up just in time to see a gorilla-like head. It kind of broke through the trees. Scared out of his damn mind, he jumped up and got into the passenger seat of my car. He didn't think to wake us up, and he said, "Hey guys, I just saw a damn Bigfoot." He sat there silently because he was scared. Apparently, a few hours later, he heard a loud thrashing sound behind camp near the food. This time, he woke me up, terrified. We got out of the car and snuck commando-like back to the food station where Mr. Minnesota Ghost Bigfoot was rustling around in his tent. I started laughing at Hank because I figured that's what he heard, and he didn't know yet what he saw earlier, so we looked at him. He was scared. The look in his eye, he said we needed to look at the food. We rounded a corner and came across the food site, and it was totally picked clean. Nothing there. I immediately started to look around the hillside as Hank said, "It's gone," and turned to run back to camp. The second he turned, I saw a gigantic something rise up. It was about 60 feet up the hill from me. It was enormously built, reddish brown. I could only see it from the low back up, but based on the way its body shifted, it took 3 steps uphill to my left, and it was gone. The first 2 steps it took, it had its hands lifted up by its head. On the 3rd step, they started to go down to a normal walking position. I think this was to avoid smacking the brush with its arms, because it was damn near silent. This gave me a great chance to see its biceps and shoulder muscles, which were huge. It didn't appear to have a prominent neck. I didn't see a face because it was a 3/4 profile. Basically, I suspect it grabbed the food, heard us coming, and ducked down out of view uphill from the food. When it saw Hank turn, it thought that this was his chance to slip away unnoticed, so it took off, and I just happened to be looking at it. After everything settled down, I made Hank and Zach stand up where I saw it so I could get a size comparison. It dwarfed them. It was twice as wide and about 3 feet taller. I would estimate the height at least 9 feet. I've never been good at guessing weight, but I'd have to guess over 400 pounds. The other members of the research group seemed strangely unimpressed or uninterested with my sighting, which I kind of found odd. After I told everyone else what I saw, we all walked up there because Hank and Zach told me there were footprints, and indeed there were. It was about 16 inches long, and they stamped into pretty loose soil, so they weren't exactly well defined. I know everybody's probably thinking this high probability that I was hoaxed. I mean, I go out with a research group, and within 12 hours I've seen a Sasquatch? Yeah, right. I was thinking the same thing until I saw the footprints. That's one possibility. It would be that they had some giant athletic guy planted in the woods to fake us out. This actually seems somewhat reasonable. Due to my skeptical nature, though, I've tried to think of all the possibilities. I've come to the conclusion that that was not the case. Thanks for listening, Travis. Since this encounter, Travis has been on many squashing trips with the group and without the group. He and his friends have had activity in several different locations since then. In many ways, this is a typical sighting. A lone group, high off-grid, leading the willing to a brush with a giant. Travis and his friends became believers that day. For me, it's just another real Bigfoot encounter. Thanks for watching. I'm Reverend Jeff, and may the Squatch be with you.